right. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Kev. I'm super excited for today's episode. And I just want to do a little brief intro of Kev. So, meet Kev Humphrey, the mystical entrepreneur. So, today I am sure that we're going to dive into his extraordinary life as a seasoned entrepreneur, but with that mystical twist, and hailing from the stunning landscapes of Devon. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's it.
And his journey began as a computer programmer, weaving his way through the labyrinth of information technology for nearly 4 decades. And I always love it when our backgrounds are just so diverse that brings us to, where we actually are today. And so I'm really excited that he'll be bringing, I'm sure, an enlightening blend of ancient wisdom with modern entrepreneurial insights. And so we might talk about dragons, I love the dragons, maybe shamanism, maybe the art of transformation. And I have no doubt we'll find some connections with nature, hopefully the nature of who we are and what we are, and the mystical realm. So welcome, Kev. How are you today?
Well, what a beautiful way to introduce me. Thank you very much. I'm amazing. I'm feeling good, and good to meet you at last.
Yes, so good to meet. And so, one of the reasons, amongst many, of course, I see that we have a lot of things in common. So, for example, our love for dragons, our love for the shamanic work and connection to nature. But I actually really love that you call yourself the English mystic as well. And that's actually a word that I've only recently really felt a strong connection to, having a mystical life or the mystics. So I wanted to ask from your perspective, like, what does that mean to be a mystic, or what is mystical to you?
Mm. Yeah, it came to me about 3 years ago. I was talking with one of my coaches, and I was sitting there going, "What do I call myself? I've got all of these gifts. I've got this computer background that I've moved into shamanism, and Reiki, and Rahani, and meeting dragons and guides and spirits. And I'm like, how do I describe that? If
Yeah.
I want to get out to the world and say, here I am, it's Kev, do I just call myself Kevin Humphrey? And many people do that, and their names are quite powerful. Many people change their names. And we were just sitting there going, what sums it up? What
Yeah.
sums up all of those things? Mysticism, magical, wizards. I'm like, I don't want to be called a wizard. And it's just the
Mm.
word mystical just stuck. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'm English. So that's fairly obvious. And so we just put the two words together, and it was like, wow, it's amazing. And all the websites and everything was there, and the username wasn't used by anyone else anywhere. So it's just like,
Mm.
that's meant to be. It came in. So yeah, for mystical for me is anything that's slightly out of the ordinary.
Mm. Yeah.
From
Beautiful.
dragons, aliens, healing, spiritual stuff. It encompasses such a wide range, so I like
Yeah.
it. It doesn't
Yeah.
stamp you in place.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think that's a beautiful way of summarizing probably exactly the reasons I came to loving this work, because it's not quite this, it's not that, it doesn't pigeonhole us anywhere, and it just
Yeah.
encompasses all of that energy. But that being said, given that you're such a well-versed practitioner and have many modalities, I'm sure, do you think that saying the word mystic though gives people the idea that is not grounded in a reality, or does not have a foundation or a way of how it's done? Like, do you feel that sometimes people think, oh, like that's just magic, it's not real? Like, what do you think about that?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we used that mystic from the sort of when I was in my youth in the 70s and 80s. Mystic was that very strange person that sat in a room over a glass ball, and they would tell you your future. And there was this lady called Mystic Meg that was
Okay.
there. And when I got the word mystic, I was like, am I starting to sound a bit like I'm a fortune teller or something? But most people I speak to understand the idea of mystic, and then I'll explain that, yeah, it encompasses the Reiki. And everyone goes, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of Reiki." And then you mention shamanism and Rahani, and then you lose people a bit. They're not quite sure what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, once people experience what it is, they listen to the drama, or they listen to a meditation, or they go on a journey, or they have some healing. It then just people just inherently understand it. I find, or most do. There's always some
Mm.
that don't want to.
Well, yes, and I'm sure you know as well, we just can't work with those who don't want to believe, right? I love this
Exactly.
saying. I love the saying of, if you can't see or experience the magic if you don't believe in magic, right? If you
Yeah,
think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So I think we just forget about the people who are not intrigued by the mystics
yeah, yeah.
and leave them doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the more that you put the message out and the more consistent you are, and you do ground that into normal life, people do start to actually open up. I mean, recently I had a Dragon Thunder Summit, and there was 30 speakers on that. And a friend of mine, he's a very, very normal, an accountant and the rest of it,
Mm,
and he there was just a spark there, and he watched one
yeah,
of the speakers, and it opened his heart to magic. And he
yeah,
now talks about dragons as less being some mythical creature and something, maybe there is something there, and is exploring it.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's good to leave them alone, but also keep sending little messages.
Yes, absolutely. And hey, so I resonate with that. So I'm actually a chartered accountant. So my background is actually business. So I studied, or not
Yeah,
just studied, but I worked over a decade in
yeah.
corporate finance, corporate strategy, transformation, all of that. So if you had asked and told me about the mystics, shamanism, the drumming, all of these things, probably not that long ago, I would look at you dumbfounded and just say, yeah, that's not for me. But there's always an element of people that are connected to it. And so in hindsight, I look back and I realize, for decades, probably since I was young, I've always loved dragons. I've always loved fairy tales. I've always loved the Harry Potters, the Golden Compass, Chronicles of Narnia. Like, I've actually always loved that stuff.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit more about you. I think I might have read your bio on the website. I think you've been introduced to this world from a much younger age. Is that right?
Well, initially, like most people, I followed the career route. So I was nearly 4 decades in information technology. Started as a coder, sitting at my computer all day, writing programs to do the things. And then the big web came along, and I was like, oh, I need to jump into that. So I spent a lot of time coding, and then also went into project management and all the rest of it.
Mm.
And like many people, you go up that slippery ladder to the very top of your career, and you get there, and you look around, and go, oh,
Is this it?
oh, okay. So I made it in
Yeah.
theory, but why is there still this yearning for something else? And as a child, I was a mystical child, so I don't remember it. My parents said I used to see horses and I'd see dragons in the bedroom, but I always remember that I used to see a lion, and I had
Mm.
a lion that used to literally a full-grown male lion with a great big mane would run up the stairs and turn the corner, and it would leap at me whenever I was sick or with disease, and I'd imagine I hide under my duvet and the lion wouldn't get me, but it
Oh,
never actually got
wow.
me. He'd jump at me.
Yeah.
Um, Many years later, I was on a Vipassana retreat, and this lion was in the garden. And I was thinking, oh, some lions escaped from the zoo. And in Vipassana retreat, you can't speak, you can't talk. So I'm sitting there going, how do I tell anyone? And then it looked at me, and I'm like, oh, am I going to be breakfast? And then I heard in my head, it's me. I'm like, it's you. And then I heard in my head again, I'm the lion that used to attack you as a child, but I wasn't attacking you. I was
Yeah.
attacking you with dis-ease. I was like, so that lion's now in my shamanic temple, and is one of my body protectors.
Yeah, isn't it incredible? It reminds me a lot of the story that my husband was actually telling me. He said, I guess for a long time, he was dreaming of
Mhm.
this bear chasing him, like always the same dream. The bear was chasing him. And of
Yeah.
course, by that time I'm, working shamanically and everything. And at some point I just paused and said, babe, did you ever think for once that that's actually just a part of you and it just wants to talk to you? And so I think from then, and also the fact that I think it was maybe during his drum making or something, and he was noticing that bear presence come in. So I think
Mhm.
there was this aha moment that, oh, the bear's not coming. It'll never get me. It's actually here to support us or support him and his journey.
Mm.
So I wonder, Kev, since both you and I come from similar kind of corporate backgrounds, what advice would you give people how to start paying attention to the mystics is actually here knocking on your door? Like, how do we give them that sense of these are the signs,
Mm.
that they're very much a part of our world, not the ordinary world, but very much part of our world? What would you say?
Yeah, I think for me, the for me, I had a huge awakening with a dragon coming in. But most people, I think, if you look back through your childhood, and what was the toy you played with the most?
Mm,
Was it a snake or something like that? And I look back, I had a snake, and it's now one of my main guides.
yeah.
And when you look back, the synchronicities through your life quite they stand out. So I would say the best thing for someone, if you're really interested, is sit down with a piece of paper and map out your life when you were born, things you remember from your childhood, what happened when you were a teenager, when you were 21, and obviously
Mm.
if you're as old as I am and you've been here nearly 6 decades and you've got a lot of life. But what are the main points, the changes in your life? And
Yeah.
you'll see a synchronicity there and you'll go, oh yeah, that was obvious and that happened. And then
Mm,
if you're interested, just sit. Don't have to meditate. I know sometimes meditation, some people is a bit, ooh, but just sit in silence, listen to
yeah.
your breath, and literally invite your spirits in, or your friends in, or just invite the mystical in, and just
Yeah.
listen and see if something wakens up. Maybe your sense of smell will waken up, or maybe suddenly your hearing will go really amazing. You'll hear the
Mm,
owl that you normally not hear. It's just that being there in that moment, because we're always in the past, we're always in the
yeah.
future. Very rarely are we here, just being here in that moment and just pausing,
Yeah.
just letting it all come in. That
Yeah.
that's the best advice I would say. There's many
Yeah.
other things you can do. That's a lot of doing. If many just being in the moment. Great.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that's a very, very good way to start, right? Just actually having a think about those milestones, and as I said, dragons were always there.
Yeah.
I think the first time in one of my shamanic trainings, we actually properly lied down to do a shamanic journey. Lo and behold, it's Phoenix that comes through. And Phoenix
Yeah.
has always been in my awareness. In fact, I had a tattoo of Phoenix. Obviously, it's very prominent in my culture as well. So I had this resonance with it. And
Yeah.
so actually, I remember the first time that I did the journey and Phoenix came, it was almost like, oh no, that's just so cliche, like, of course he's going to come. But that
Yeah.
isn't that just it? It's like the doors and the veils are actually so thin that when you actually put some conscious intention, they just want to come through right away. Did you find that
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, I think when it happens, when you truly believe it, then all of those times you think, oh, that was then that, and you realize they were knocking on the door for a lot
Yeah.
of time, and you just had your ears and your eyes shut, and then they open, and you're like, oh yeah, this is about the 100th time they've come knocking at last, yeah, and then the spirits wherever they are very happy that you've just open the door a little bit. Maybe you've not
Yeah.
gone into it and become a mystic and the rest of it, but just that slight connection is beautiful. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I agree.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about dragons. I'm feeling like maybe they want to say something. How did you meet the dragons?
Well, as I say, my parents say that as a child I used to see dragons and horses in the bedroom, and dragons and horses are now very big in my life. I don't remember that, but I remember the lion. But yeah, I mean, for me, dragons were always just like dinosaurs or something. I never thought about it, and it never came to me at all. But one day I was out riding on the horse that I'm human to. Um, I think at that time I'd worked out how many times we'd ridden, but it was in the thousands. And she's
Oh,
like a big
wow.
shy, a big solid girl, afraid of nothing. Tractors, combine harvesters, helicopters, loud noises, balloons. She's like, yeah, whatever, who cares? Just keep,
Mm,
and one day we were going this normal ride that we go on, and it's a nice little hack where you just go gently, and then there's a field where you can go galloping around, and she always gets very excited. But there's like a little alleyway that you have to go through between some fields, and
yeah.
this day she wouldn't go there. She was like, "I'm not going there." I'm like, "Okay, so you've seen something I can't see." So we went the long way around, went charging around like you do, galloping
Mm,
across the countryside. hot and sweaty after maybe a half an hour of doing that. We were heading back, and rather than go the long way, I thought, well, let's try going through this alleyway the other way. And she was
Mm.
like, I'm not going there. And I'm like, why? I can't. Maybe there's a shadow that she's seen, and it looks like it's something. I couldn't see it. So that,
Yeah.
and I was like, I had this inner feeling that I should ask. So I
Mm.
rather pathetically said, "Who's there?" You know, and I was like, "No, ask. What, like, you mean it?" So when you're feeling like, "Oh, I've got to get some courage," so I sort of
Yeah, yeah,
pulled
yeah.
this courage from my solar plexus all the way up to my heart, into my throat. I was like, "All right, who's there?" I felt a bit stupid, and I was like, "Well, it's only me and my horse. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
There's no one here." And then there was this shimmer, and I was like, "Oh," very serious look. I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And a shimmer appeared, and it looked like a tail, but it was like
Mm.
a portrait, and I'm like, "Oh, I've lost the plot." Then it became a, a big leg, and then a body, then a huge wing, then another leg, and then a neck, and then this head. And I looked at it, and I've got my dragon head here that I burn my incense on.
Mm.
It's this big dragon head, and for a millisecond, I felt its presence, and I was like, "I'm just watching you." And I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah.
By that time, my horse was absolutely like total fear. She's like spun around. I'm almost fall off, hold on to her neck, and we literally gallop home. Uh,
Mm.
we get there, and somebody says, "What happened? What happened?" It's like, I was like, "I can't tell you. I just saw a dragon." So, I think she saw a monster in the shadows,
Mm.
and I didn't tell anyone for about 3 days. I eventually told my two business coaches, and they looked at me with a look that was like, "Okay, Kevin."
But were you already into the shamanic work by then? Like you were, no.
I I wasn't. I'd heard of Reiki and the rest of it, and I've done some Reiki, but
Okay, okay.
shamanism hadn't found me by then. So I was like, I don't know what to. I've lost the plot. I must have
Yeah.
lost it. Psychic moments. My brain's gone. And then about 6 months later, I was at a conference about property development and investing and all the rest of it. And there was a lady there whose presence. There was something about her. I thought, I need to speak to her. And she came and sat down at the table, and
Mm.
then I don't know why, but I just started chatting to her. I said, "Do you know dragons?" And she's, "I do. I work them all the time. I'm a shaman, and I'm in Wales, and I work with the dragons all the time." I was like, "Wow, okay,
I could just feel all the shivers on my body, like
yeah."
as you're saying
I
that.
said,
It's like, oh.
will you be?" I said, "Will you be my teacher?" She's like, "Yeah, of course."
Mm.
So she became my first shamanic teacher, and introduced me to the dragons properly. I went to Wales, where you've got the red dragon, and she
Mm.
blew into my heart the dragon energy, and yeah. So from that point onwards, the dragons became strong in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about an initiation into shamanism, huh?
I know. It was a bit. I think the dragon came along. It's like, come on, get that soul woken up.
Yeah, yeah. So isn't that fascinating to really see the evidence of how our ordinary world, like our horses, like are really actually present and aware of these energies and creatures from other dimensions? I think that people sometimes really need to see, experience that for themselves before they believe. Do you think that? Because sometimes, they could just be, oh, yeah, I can imagine the dragons, right? Like, I haven't had this visceral experience where I see it, in my 3D. I haven't seen any shimmers, but it's like I can feel their energy. And when I first started connecting with it as well, it's like, oh, I don't know, right? Because it's like you have no frame of reference to compare it to. At least maybe you knew what a dragon looked like, so you can see that, okay, that was the dragon's leg or the head.
Yeah.
So do you feel that sometimes, with the shamanic work, that people literally need to have that direct experience, which is what, shamanism can be, for them to
Mhm.
believe that there is these other realms and other worlds?
I think so. I think the person that can go on a shamanic journey and see it and feel it with like their essence or their third eye is fairly rare.
Yeah.
Um, the people I teach, I always try to take them on a journey fairly early on and get them used to that whole process of a shamanic journey, and realizing that even though it feels imaginary, it's real.
Mm,
And it takes a while for people to, because like you say, there is no frame of reference at all. So
mm,
you think your dream's a dream, and you think that what you're imagining on the shamanic journey is imaginary, but it's not until you've done it a few times, something just clicks, and then you
yeah.
start to truly believe it. And then when you truly believe what's going on in that other realm, that's when you can become the true shaman and stand in the middle with half of you in
Mm,
the imaginary and the other half in what we call reality. And then you can
mm,
pull the two together. And then after a while, you start walking your life in both worlds. And then
yeah.
they start to merge and mix, and people then, like, I see dragons now all the time.
Mm,
I look at the clouds and I'm like, are you there? And then the clouds will move around and there'll be a big dragon up there. Or
mm,
I'll see it in the mountains. I'll be looking at the mountain, and then the light will change and the shadows will change, and then there'll be a huge dragon in the mountain. And
yeah.
I've got a nephew that used to see them all the time, and he's now
Yeah.
moved to that age where he's less seeing them. But children are so innocent, they see them.
Yeah.
Adults, like you were saying earlier, if you don't believe in magic, you don't get to see the magic. If you
Mm,
don't believe in dragons, you don't see them. If you don't believe in fairies, you don't see them. Don't believe in elves, you don't see them. You believe in
mm,
them, then they think, oh, that human's open to us, and it sort of opens something in your eyes. Somebody said to me, you see 1% of the light spectrum.
yeah.
So what's in
Yeah.
the other
I mean,
99%?
really,
Yeah.
I mean, our consciousness is wwhatever percent. We only see so much. We only hear so much. But
Yeah.
this thing of even just awakening, activating our mystic self. Sometimes I say that it's like somewhere along that journey of growing up, we just lose it. Like I don't think my childhood had any magic. I mean, like family wise and culturally, we just don't have that. And so I feel like that part of me was never cultivated, never nurtured.
Mm.
Um, and some people, maybe in your case, as a child, it was very much there. And then somewhere along the line, something gets awakened. So do you feel that in the collective now, there's just much more of these frequencies and more of these maybe beings who are here to help us? And so seeing that more people are open to it and experiencing the connection from the other side?
I think so. I think that if we call it a veil, I think the veil is thinner. There's at certain times of the year on the portals, the 8 portal and the rest of it, where it definitely is thinner, but it seems to be thinner now. So when I'm
Mm,
teaching people to go on shamanic journeys, sometimes it used to take people 2 or 3 attempts to really get that out of their head, but people
yeah.
I think are more awake to it. We're seeing, obviously there's so many different films, aren't there, where there's magic in it, and I think people are intrigued by magic, and I think people are
Mm,
starting to sort of they've had that because of the whole COVID thing. People had time to be with themselves and
mm,
less noise, and of the way society pushes them. So a lot of people went with what happened, but a lot of people also
mm.
just stopped and went, hold on a second, I'm going to think for myself a bit here. And I think that's what's happened, that people are thinking a bit more for themselves, and they're thinking maybe that's not a story. Maybe there's some truth in that. And I think people are a bit more open to being investigative for themselves. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm finding. People come along
Yeah.
with a bit more of an open heart rather than I don't believe in magic, that's rubbish. Or of like, maybe there's something here. And
Yeah.
that little gap opens up so much quickly. Just
Mm.
people are, I think people are more open, or there's a percentage of people that are more open.
Yeah, well, look, there's and probably, they're resonating with us. If we're open, hopefully we're attracting the clients and
Yep.
students who are also open. I certainly
Yeah,
don't want to,
exactly.
really try to convince someone. Like I think I've, given up on that. Like I'm not here to convince you there's magic. So, but I definitely do notice this. I'm just going to call it awakening energy. I know this word has, many
Yeah,
meanings, but that inquiry for self, because I,
yeah.
like you, had that feeling of getting to the top somewhere in a corporate ladder, and then just realizing, wait, this has zero fulfillment over here in the heart center.
Yeah.
So there must be something more, and I really hope that people ask the big questions. Is this it? Is this what life should feel like? Is there something more? Is there magic? What is this I'm experiencing? And
Mm.
whether or not they know the veils are thin, I think what I see happening is lots of people are starting to ask questions, you know, as you said, that inquisitive part and maybe hopefully thinking for themselves. I see the energy of, you know, stuff coming up for people,
Yeah,
and the brave and courageous will ask the right questions in looking at, well, what does that mean? What does that
yeah,
mean about me in relation to whatever's happening in their life? So I hope that this is what's happening in the world, you know, that people, I'm not attached to them, you know, needing to wake up to the magic, but just hopefully getting to understand a deep part of themselves through whichever portal, whichever gateway it is.
yeah.
Because I'm sure maybe you also notice like so many people now maybe working for themselves, changing their life paths, actually building businesses for themselves because they want to be free from the system. And so on that note, let's talk a bit about entrepreneurship.
Hey,
You know, as a solo entrepreneur as well, and in conscious business, I feel it can be challenging. It can be challenging. What can you share about, I guess, being in this kind of work, spiritual work, service work, and business? Like, yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
I first got into entrepreneurship, and I think, like many people, because I'd had enough of being bossed around, I think, and being told exactly what I must do and couldn't do and should do, and having to book all those holidays and get everything authorized. It just felt I just got to that stage in my career where I was just like, I've had enough of this control stuff. I want freedom. So
Yes.
yeah, and I think like many of us that are on maybe a mystical path, we don't know we are. And I think entrepreneurship is one of of what I've seen is one of the biggest awakeners for people, because
Mm,
as you step into entrepreneurship, you've left the comfort and the safety and all of those things that gives you. And as you step out of it, you drop a lot of expectations on you, and it just I found my mind to hold on a second. I thought there was only this way I had to go. I was going to make a million. I was going to drive a sports car, but actually, there's so many avenues. There's so many other jobs out there that I didn't even know existed that are they make my heart warm rather
mm,
than just put money in my and then that's the hard part. Then is like I need some money to pay the bills, but I don't need as much as I had in corporate. So
yeah.
where's the balance? And that was the bit for me was the hardest part. It took me probably from first thinking about nearly 10 years of being in the mainstream,
Hmm.
working for the corporates and the bosses, but also doing lots of stuff to set myself free.
Yeah.
And it was I tried lots of different things. I was selling cookies at one point and weight loss stuff. I was in affiliate marketing. I tried to buy and sell houses. I tried to buy and sell land. And
Wow. You really like tried it
yeah,
all.
it's like I need to figure out where's my groove. And each one was a bit. It was okay, but it didn't make my heart sing. And then I got into Reiki and then Rahani and shamanism, and I was like, oh, no, second, I'm really enjoying this part, and I did a lot of healings, and that really was beautiful. And I was like, but I feel a bit like I'm just giving people fish, and I want to teach them to fish, and that was when I thought, how do I do
Yes.
that? And
Yeah.
that's when I did my shamanic diploma, and that whole process turned me from someone playing and practicing more with myself and some friends to actually I'm going to take this seriously, and it is a career, it's a life
Yeah.
choice really.
Yeah.
um, and that move takes a while, and it there is a point where you do have to leap. Yes,
Mm.
that
Yeah.
yeah, lots of people leap and they build the plane on the way down. I tried that, I failed. I found that doing it slowly and transitioning slowly works, and that's what I
Yeah.
did for every year before last and
Yeah.
transitioned
That's
into
that's interesting. I
yeah.
like this. Like build the plane as you're coming down. I think that's what I'm doing. I think I jumped out of the plane a few years ago and refused to get into
Like,
another one.
"Woo."
But I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how fast can I build this? But, as you said, I think what you said about it when you step into entrepreneurship, and probably maybe even in a more amplified way when you step into like a spiritual kind of work,
Mm.
right? Conscious business and being of service, it really pushes you forward into looking at your shit and all the stuff that comes up, in building business. But do
It
you
does.
do you also see, so when you see that, we don't have to make our million bucks, in a certain way,
Mhm.
even on this path of spiritual entrepreneurship, I often see that, with us healers or practitioners, it's like you do the one-on-one, you scale to one to many, maybe you add on retreats and group things. Like, do you also see that sometimes there's a little bit of a mold of the way in which solo entrepreneurs can actually grow and scale?
Yeah, I think there is. I think people are biggest problem I found at the beginning was people are expecting everything to be free, and
Mm,
there's quite a lot. There are a lot of spiritual people that are happily doing that because it's just a hobby.
mm,
So that was the hardest part for me, was to extract myself from that and say, no, there needs to be a fee, not necessarily always money, but there needs to be an energy exchange.
yeah,
And that was one of the important bits I found, that just for me to then with confidence say, I need to charge you for this.
yeah.
Um, I've sort of gone off track now. I've lost where I was going.
Well, I was asking about whether you see that there's a similar pathway that a lot of the spiritual entrepreneurs are going, and whether you saw there might be a different path or different ways of how to do it, even though we all do similar things being in service.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. There is a particular path, and all the teachers are teaching us to follow that path. And
Mm,
I've been on lots of different trainings, and I've heard lots of different ways of doing it, and how you should be on social media, and how you should be on camera, and the rest of it. Having gone through all of that, and I have to say, probably tried all of them because I'm a very good student, and then I'll just chuck myself in and try it. I think what happens in the end, you get to a stage where you come out the other side of all the being and do this, do
hmm.
that, and you almost get to a point where you're like, oh, well, I need a rest, and you stop, and then
Yeah.
things work better for you when you stopped all the doing, and I realize that if you be you, and you be in a place where you listen to what maybe your guides want or the universe wants,
Mm,
you stop thinking about what you think people want, and you start asking, what do people want? And I did a lot of that, and my Reiki and my shamanic healings and the rest of it weren't particularly successful, and it was a lot of pushing it on people. And then I
mm,
stopped and I slowed down, a bit like you're saying, dragons were with you all the time. I was like, okay, where am I and where do I want to be? And actually, why am I here? I've got all these skills now, but why am I truly here? What's
yeah.
or what's the next step? What's the next moment? And then the dragons came to me. I've got three main dragons, and they were like, right, I think you're ready. And I was like, okay. So it's like everything else has been training, and you've done well, sort of thing.
Mm,
The next, this is what we want you to do. And it was like, create a dragon summit. I'm like, what?
yes.
Want you to create a worldwide dragon summit? And I was like, I don't know anyone else that works with dragon. Maybe two people. They're like,
And
don't
now
worry,
how many do you know? And now how many do you know, Kev?
60, 70.
Isn't
Yeah.
that
But they
amazing?
just said, leave it to us. And I did. They said, do the technical bit because we can't sit at a computer, do that bit, and
Mm,
we'll attract all those beautiful people to you. And it's people just came out of the woodwork. Like, how did you
yeah.
hear about me? I'm not quite sure. Somebody said about you. And,
Yeah.
you know, the summit is there. And the reason we're now talking is that. So, yeah, I
Exactly.
think there is a whole load of things what you should do, but then there's what actually do you need to be doing, and your spirit team already know, and it's just a
Yes.
case of stopping again, a bit like at the very beginning, stopping and just being there in that moment and listening and saying,
Mm,
what is the next step, rather than planning that 3, 5, 10 year plan. You still need to
yeah.
have some sort of plan, but really I now ask my guides, what's the next step? What do I
Yeah,
need to talk
definitely.
about? And they'll go, this or that,
Well,
or they'll say, don't, just let it flow.
we've got to do all the unprogramming, deprogramming from our corporate life of having goals and, 5-year plans and 10-year plans. But they're, most of the time, even in corporate, as soon as you approve something, something's got to change anyway. So how's that different than our plan? I suppose
Yeah.
like I see it more like the vision, the vision of what it is that I'm aspiring to. And maybe the
Mm.
pathways to get there are constantly changing, maybe even up leveling. And I trust that. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll agree with me that, this thing of asking our guides, it's actually the deep listening, the deep trusting. Once we
Yeah.
establish this connection, it's like, well, if you have to practice what you preach, practice what you teach, which is
Hmm.
you're teaching people to connect to spirit, to connect to their guides. So if we're not listening to the guides, then we're not being good students, are we?
Very, yeah.
Yeah, and all of these things about entrepreneurship, like I probably haven't done as much as you and experimented as much, but I do feel like I feel that deep listening is telling me sometimes when
Hmm.
I see the model in front of me, what I said before, one to one, then one to many, and then add retreats. It's like, there must be a different way. Like this cannot be the only way. But because so many people, aka so much collective energy, is doing it that way, there's a lot of energy. But then if
Hmm.
I have my deep listening, it's already telling me like, sure, there's many people who will succeed in this way, but it's not the way how I'm going to do it. And I don't even know how it's going to unfold yet. And I feel like all my connections and things now, it's like showing me, and they're just
Hmm.
telling me, just meet this person, continue your podcast, okay, start your whatever, Kajabi or whatever, and just do it. Because I suppose in the following, in the surrendering to whatever the guides are saying, assuming that you discern that they're for your highest good, then we will see the magic unfolding, won't we? And hindsight is always 2020, but it's that development and the trust
Hmm.
of the vision and the foresight, because we just don't know. Like if that crystal ball, whether it was her name, Mystic Meg, told us our
Yeah.
future, like wouldn't that just take out the wonder of the world? Like there's a bit of that magic that we actually need to live and enjoy, don't you think?
I agree. Yeah, I think for many of us, we think there's a path set out for us, and that gets there's some people think it's the way it is when they come out of college. You got to do this. You got to get married. You got to have kids. You got
Yes.
blah blah blah. Work for 40 years, retire, play golf. There's that there's that thread, isn't there? And then
Don't
as an
break
entrepreneur,
everyone's dreams, Kev. You're shattering everyone's dream.
as an entrepreneur, you step out of that and go, right, there's some freedom. And then the next step is just like you say, is to almost give control over, but you're not. It's the word surrender, isn't it?
Mm.
Surrendering to what your life's path is, surrendering to what your guides can help you with. But I'm almost making it sound like I'm now giving it over to everything to the guides, but it's not. They're there. I see them as my counsel. So
Yes.
I'll come along and I'll get some feelings and some thoughts for it, and then I'll say, these are all the 10 different things, and I'll sit with them and go, what feels right that we should be doing next? And then I'll come along with an 11th one, go,
Mm.
no, this is what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
But you choose to do it. Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Does it resonate with you? And you can say no. And that's
Yeah.
the great thing about it. It is the trust. The more you do it, it's like anything, the more you trust it. One of the things I say to people, if you're starting to get that feeling, ask for things that, for example, it's December, say, can I see a butterfly? I've done that a few times because
Mm.
butterflies are big in my life, and then they're like, I'm like, I got you now because you can't show me a butterfly. And then the next thing I open on Instagram is someone talking about butterflies, and like, okay, I got you. You're using technology with me, not a physical butterfly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can ask for signposts. So if you're not sure, if you're saying, I've got this two choices, which one shall I do? You
Mm.
can ask the spirits, the guides, your ancestors, God, goddesses, whoever it is you want to talk to as being the being that's out there. You can say to them, assist me, please, please assist
Mm.
me. And they
Mm.
will. But you have to again get to that moment of just being there and really listening. And I've got some
Yeah.
guides that help me listen. some guides that provide wisdom and some other guides that provide me with foresight, vision to see. And I ask them to come in and sit with me and go, this is what we're doing today. Can you assist me?
Mm.
And they do. You just get a little nudge. And I also use the pendulum that swings backwards and forwards and yes or no, and
Yeah.
because your body knows. There's
Yeah,
lots of things you can do.
absolutely. Yeah, great tips. And I think these are the things, like if people are just making the conscious decision to want to be helped, to want to discover this world, to want to discover themselves more, then
Mhm.
there'll be a plethora of tools and guides and people who will step forward and help.
Yeah,
And free will. Like I like the point that you're also mentioning about this, right? Like even when presented with choices, at the end of the day, nobody's forcing us. If we want to not listen to our guides, it's free will,
yeah,
and we can either take the quickest and shortest path to wherever it is that we, the highest destiny path that we can be on, or we can go
yeah,
the hard way, and
yeah,
sometimes it's really painful when I watch others take a longer path, but that's maybe it's one of my very human things to also surrender, to say, hey, not my life, if they want to do
mhm,
that, you just got to let
yeah.
them.
Yeah, we've all done it. We've all taken a detour on our life's
Oh,
path, and
yes, yes.
that's what it's about, isn't it? I think that
All
I
part
often
of the
see
learning.
yeah, exactly. I often see a little red thread that sort of runs through when I look backwards and think, yeah, that was the path, and yeah, I wandered off for a year there, and I came back, and yeah, I don't necessarily see it in the future. I just see now the next step, which is great.
Yeah, I guess, just because we're human, we almost need to have these experiences, have these wandering offs. Like we're curious souls, we want to have experiences. And sometimes the experience is, oh, I needed that setback to really slap me back onto path. And to be honest,
Mhm.
I'm just grateful I perked up and listened when I did. I don't think I could have lasted many more years in my corporate job. Mind you, I'm saying it like it was terrible. I had amazing experiences. I learned so much. I have lots of, skills and things that I deeply value and appreciate. But from a spiritual growth and evolution perspective, I think, thank you, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess before we wrap up, I wondered, are there any of your guides that are present and want to share anything with the audience? Just having a
Yeah,
feel for that.
we can tap in. Yeah, they're all quite noisy. I'd say my main one is a beautiful cobra,
Mm,
and that was the one where I had a snake as a child, and when I met the cobra on a journey as like finding my main guide,
mm,
it it connected my childhood with my adulthood, and it connected me to my inner child. And
mm.
what I'm going to get in the message is that many of us are ignoring our inner child, that
Yeah.
playful, joyous being that just finds delight in dandelions and rain and jumping in puddles. And as we get more mature, we leave that behind. But I've
Mm,
that connection to my little snake, to my little rubber snake, and now the cobra sort of connected my childhood. And
mm.
I now look back on that and think I need to do that more. And
Yeah.
I often do that while if I'm going for a walk on my own, and I'll jump in a puddle and I'll get muddy legs, or I'll go hug a tree and do all the things that as a child you just love to do. And I
Mm,
think that's the message I'm getting from my Cobra guide is to do that, become a bit more childlike, have
yeah.
a moment where you drop adulthood and go
Yes.
be a child again for a moment and reconnect with your inner child and love your inner child because it's still running your life. It's in there.
Oh,
It's still got
100%.
fears and
100%.
yeah, just feel that connection and see what that brings you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I want to tell you something funny. I'm
Mhm.
wearing, I don't know if you can see it, I'm actually
Yeah, yeah.
wearing my snake ring.
Hey,
So he must have tuned into the energy. Yeah, beautiful. And this is an aspect, I also deeply resonate with. I was so busy adulting most of the time. Completely forget that, sure, we have this magical childlike innocence within us. And I hope that that aspect of every one of the listeners now, that reconnect to rekindle, as you said, because it's alive in us, maybe tucked away, maybe hidden away, maybe scared,
Yeah,
so, and I feel like that's the part of me also that just loved this magic. Oh my God, this is real. It's actually
yeah,
feeling like this is real and however it shows up in our life. So you saw, the shimmer in the fields and lost the plot. I had another encounter with all my guides, but whatever it is, I feel like it's that innocence and magic that needs to be there, that spark that allows us to, spark even more magic and wonder in our lives. Thank you
exactly.
for bringing that message through. All right, I do want to share where we can find Kev after this amazing chat. So I know that Kev is on a mission to guide others along this path of self-discovery and healing. And his business offers online courses in shamanism, helping people connect with their dragon guides, providing transformative shamanic healings over Zoom. And so I think Mondays and Wednesdays you have courses. Is that right, Kev?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And you have monthly shamanism healing webinars and also the dragon talk. So everything can be found on his website, which I will
Hmm.
drop it into the show notes, englishmystic.co.uk.
And .com now as well.
And .com, amazing. So yeah, like I'm fully in tune with all of this mysticism, magic, and shamanic work, and also the deeply transformative arts. Like I think the world needs more people like you to help all of us to remember our magic and wonder and our true selves, and to really bring our gifts into the world so that we can all feel this freedom and way of being. So thank you so much for being here. And if you have anything you'd like to add or say to the audience, please feel free.
It was beautiful talking to you. And, yeah, just find me on the website. I'm always available. If anyone's around in England and wants to come down to Devon and go for a walk on Dartmoor and meet the elementals there, then let me know. I always love doing that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll chat
Thank
very
you.
soon.
Cool.